Hi, I'm Bob Duran, Secretary of Environmental Affairs for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under Governor Jane Swift. My job is to make sure that the water you drink is pure, that the air you breathe is healthy, and that our beaches, lakes, and ponds are safe to swim in. Our goal is to make the Massachusetts of the future a greener and cleaner place for you all to live. We must protect our natural resources against future damage from pollution and sprawl by preserving the natural open spaces, forested lands, and communities of Massachusetts, and by working to maintain the health of our watersheds and ecosystems and the wealth of biodiversity that they support. Through innovative programs such as the Community Preservation Initiative, the River Restore Program, and the Massachusetts Watershed Initiative, we must work to restore what has been damaged in the past. We must work to sustain our existing natural resources and minimize negative impacts on our environment by promoting environmentally safe building practices, reducing energy use, and conserving our drinking water supplies for future generations. In order to protect our treasured resources, we all must increase our preservation efforts. We must work to preserve the natural resources and biodiversity within our communities and our watersheds, and instill in our children the importance of environmental stewardship. We are all connected to the natural environment, and what we do to our land and water can drastically affect our quality of life here in Massachusetts. What better legacy can we leave to our children than to educate them about the natural environment? And what better legacy can we leave them than to preserve the irreplaceable heritage of our communities? Water, stretching across the land, nourishing life. The downhill flow of surface and groundwater towards a common point defines a geographic area called a watershed. There are 27 watersheds in Massachusetts, each with its own special qualities. Some watersheds are river systems, where streams eventually feed into rivers. Other watersheds contain basins and estuaries, where water flows into the ocean. All these areas are unique. All these areas support life. All these areas connect us to nature. All these areas must be protected. Along the southern coast of Massachusetts, and sheltered from the North Atlantic by Cape Cod and the Elizabeth Islands, lies Buzzards Bay. This bay is the focal point of a large estuary encompassing 432 square miles of land known as the Buzzards Bay Watershed. This watershed is the home to 17 municipalities, including the fishing port city of New Bedford. It encompasses thousands of acres of salt marsh, eelgrass beds, tidal flats, beaches, undeveloped woodlands, and a variety of natural resources like no other area along the entire East Coast. The roseate tern, a federally endangered shorebird, can be seen along the coast in numbers rarely found anywhere else in the world. In protected inlets all along the bay, the osprey can be seen nesting with their young. The osprey, a rare and beautiful hawk, was mistakenly called a buzzard by the early colonists, and thus the area was called Buzzards Bay. Because this watershed is predominantly a large estuary, with fresh water flowing from streams and rivers, flows into the ocean, it's an area of transition, of fresh water mixing with salt water. These transitional areas are some of the most productive on the earth, but also very fragile, and pollution of the water and protection of the land are an ever-present concern. To help protect, restore, and sustain the state's watersheds, a partnership was started between the state, local, and federal governments and community groups. This partnership is called the Massachusetts Watershed Initiative. In the southeastern part of the state, the Buzzards Bay Watershed Team works with community groups, local governments, federal programs, and people of all walks of life to help protect the watershed and its resources. This program is about the successes of the past decade and the challenges that lie ahead. But it's also about people who love their area and are getting things done to protect it through their work with town governments, community groups, and through their own individual efforts. Life in the Buzzards Bay watershed is centered around the water. It's where we live, work, and play. And protecting the quality of that water is key to maintaining the quality of our lives. There are two major categories of pollution affecting our waters. The first type occurs when large amounts of pollution are discharged from single points or pipes, such as industrial operations or wastewater treatment plants. This form of pollution is called point source pollution. Much work has been done to clean up these large point sources. One example is the New Bedford Sewer Treatment Facility.
The New Bedford Sewage Treatment Plant was one of the largest point source pollutions for Buzzards Bay. The discharge outfall pipe, historically, as I was growing up as a kid, you actually could run aground on it because there was so much material that was coming out of the pipe. Now that the plant has been redesigned to be a secondary treatment plant, the suspended solids that would build up there are no longer there. And the water is about 20 feet deep, and it's much cleaner that's coming up there.
There used to be raw sewage going into the bay even during dry weather conditions. The city made tremendous improvements to the infrastructure and eliminated this discharge of sewage. That reduction in sewage resulted in a dramatic improvement in water quality.
The increase in water quality has allowed some of the shell fishermen that used to be thrown out of here for the last 90 years have now been allowed to come back in here and harvest the local quahog, which is the hard shell clam. Another benefit from the sewage treatment plant is the fact that there have been some eelgrass beds that have started to come back on their own. And eelgrass is a very good environmental indicator of healthy water.
You see the improvements when you see eelgrass, you see fuchsia coming back on the rocks, you see water quality and clarity in the water. You're starting to see bay scallops now. We're seeing things we haven't seen in 20 years.
The challenge now is to find and eliminate the many more subtle yet pervasive sources of pollution that are difficult to detect. We call these smaller, widespread causes of pollution non-point source. Many of these sources are related to development and how people use the land where they live. Septic systems, animal waste, lawn fertilizers, road salt, chemical and petroleum use all contribute pollutants to areas that many thought were pristine.
The state's been working with the communities around Buzzards Bay on two fronts. First, to help them address existing growth. We've been working with them on a lot of remediation projects that have ended up cleaning up the water quality and in a lot of cases helped open some shellfish beds. The second area we're working with them on is the new growth. And we're trying to help them plan and grow in such a way that folks can continue to move down here, but at the same time we protect the resources of the bay. Communities are becoming much more proactive in dealing with stormwater inputs around the bay. In Marion, they've installed a stormwater treatment facility that takes water from over 50 acres of the lower harbor area and treats it before it enters the bay. Where we used to have a parking lot, we now have a created wetland. What that wetland does is take the stormwater and treats it prior to it discharging to the bay. Here in Wareham's Broad Marsh River, we have an example of a cleanup story. First, the town sewered the homes you see behind me to alleviate the problem of failed septic systems. Second, the DPW worked closely with the Division of Marine Fisheries and Buzzards Bay project to get some state grants to find and take care of all the stormwater discharges going into this water body. And for the first time in decades, we now have open shellfish beds.
Here in Westport, we have roughly 1,000 family and commercial licenses and non-residents using the resources in this town. We've reclaimed acreage due to the cleanup of the estuary. In particular, 165 acres in the Cadman's Neck area, which have a lot of oysters and soft-shell clams. And it's all a positive step for the town. I'm very pleased that we still have an estuary that we can shellfish in. The faces of the people when they're out there enjoying the resource. You can't put a value on the happiness that they get out of being out there.
Buzzards Bay is home to more than 13,000 recreational boats. Just as our activities on land have an impact on the bay, so do our activities on the water. One significant source of pollution from boating is wastewater.
Quality of the water has improved. With the assistance of the state, we've done a great deal about having floating, as you can see right behind me, 2 of the harbor master boats that are equipped with pumps to go and pump the septic tanks on the boats so they don't end up in the harbor and in the bay. We recently were very successful in getting Buzzards Bay designated as a no discharge area. All of these things, I'd like to think, in the long run, are going to end up as very positive benefits for the bay.
Town of Marion's always had an aggressive pump-out program. We usually start somewhere in early May and go to late November. This year we're estimating doubling what we did last year. Last year we pumped approximately 7,000 gallons. With the new Buzzards Bay being a no discharge zone, we've had a significant increase of requests for pump-out this year over last year.
A second source of pollution from boats is the gasoline and oil used in the engines. To address this problem, the Buzzards Bay Action Committee, with assistance from the state's Office of Coastal Zone Management, has been able to institute a model program called the Build SOC program.
The Build SOC program, which we initiated just about a year ago, and we were looking to distribute as many of these to boaters as we could so that they could learn about the benefits of using bilge socks. Bilge socks basically encapsulate the oil that's floating in your bilge water and eliminate the possibility of that oil finding its way into the bay.
Ken Pacheco, the Dartmouth shellfish warden, is one supporter of the bilge sock program.
Is what it looks like. Pretty ugly, isn't it? Okay, that's what would be pumped overboard if this bilge sock wasn't in there. And we used to put detergent. Now this is the worst thing you can do, is put detergent in the bilge. What it does is it breaks up the oil, and then the oil sinks to the bottom, and that in turn kills whatever is living in the sediment, which of course is shellfish and everything else, fish eggs, everything. And you'll find this around these boat yards and stuff. If you dig in the mud, you'll see the oil actually come up from the surface. And this is much better than putting any type of bilge cleaner. And once you use these, you don't put bilge cleaner with them because that defeats the purpose.
Another type of non-point source pollution in Buzzards Bay is excess nitrogen loading. Nitrogen controls plant growth in coastal waters. Too much nitrogen causes excess growth of algae. That reduces water clarity and also uses up the oxygen in the water that marine life relies upon to breathe.
All around the edge of Buzzards Bay is a network of small embayments, harbors, and small bays that are greatly affected by nitrogen loading. Whenever it rains, water runs over people's lawns, off the streets, and carries nitrogen into the bay. In reality, most of the nitrogen going into the bay is from residential land use. That means lawns and septic systems. In fact, most of the nitrogen coming into this bay are from people's septic systems in their backyard.
The Coalition's Water Quality Monitoring Program, Bay Watchers, has been monitoring nutrient and nitrogen overloading in Buzzards Bay for the past 9 years. In that time, what we've been plotting is a trend towards nutrient overloading, too much nitrogen entering Buzzards Bay. But central Buzzards Bay remains to be one of the healthiest estuaries on the East Coast. However, our data shows that more than half of the harbors and coves, particularly the upper parts of these bays, are suffering from excessive nitrogen loading from their watersheds.
What we're focusing on is the problem with nitrogen, specifically the nutrients as they're washing down from the rivers, washing off our streets, washing off the lawns, coming down, everything's flowing downstream, and it's ending up in our harbors and coves along the coastline.
The majority of the nitrogen problem is related to residential development. It's not large sewage treatment plants to a large extent, although problems do exist still in that area. Unfortunately, I think we're at a spot right here where we have the time and the resources to manage growth in our watershed.
So what are the solutions to non-point source pollution? Primarily, they reside with us. Buzzards Bay residents need to continue efforts to identify and fix existing wastewater problems through septic system repairs or sewer extensions. They also need to focus efforts on the pollution carried by stormwater from roads. As well as solving existing problems, we need to manage new growth and development so that additional pollution problems are not created. Some of our watershed's most prized natural resources can only be protected by keeping them in their natural setting and free from development. Many organizations and individuals are working to ensure these lands are protected.
A lot of people who live around Buzzards Bay take for granted the fact that 10 years ago there was a land use survey done of our entire region, and at that time it was found that 75% of the Buzzards Bay watershed was still undeveloped forest, wetlands, and open fields. That is really unparalleled among East Coast estuaries, and it really has a lot to do with why this watershed and this bay is still so healthy. Our towns need to get a lot more proactive in the face of a really heavy development boom right now to protect more and more open space. In the Buzzards Bay region, we've consumed more land in the past 30 years than we had in the previous 350 since the Pilgrims landed. If you try to think about the scale of that, the impact that new growth is having on Buzzards Bay, this bay has never seen that rate of growth. Buzzards Bay really, in many ways, is ahead of the curve. All of our towns in Buzzards Bay have very active, very energetic local land trusts, which are doing a lot to protect open space. The state, the Environmental Affairs Office, has committed a lot of attention to southeastern Mass lately, focusing state funding and priority on protecting open space in the Buzzards Bay region.
Dartmouth Natural Resources Trust is a 30-year-old private nonprofit land trust. We focus all of our efforts in the town of Dartmouth, which is about 64 square miles. We own 40 open space reserves, and we hold 25 conservation restrictions throughout the town of Dartmouth. DNRT has been working with the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs on several different projects. We've just recently finished up a 3-year initiative to protect about 1,100 acres of open space within the Slocum's River watershed. Here we are at the Slocum's River Reserve, which is just a classic example of some of the success stories that have been going on within the Buzzards Bay region for the last several years. You can see here's the Slocum's River to the north, and then it flows to the south down into the Buzzards Bay. We are surrounded here at the Slocum's River Reserve by protected farmland, by conservation restrictions, by state-owned properties to the south. This truly is a wonderful example of a collaborative effort. DNRT was able to work with our partners, the Trustees of Reservations, which is another private nonprofit land trust, and the town of Dartmouth, the Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program. All together we were able to protect this truly extraordinary property on the banks of the Slocum's River.
The Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program, known as the APR program, is run by the Department of Food and Agriculture and is used to purchase deed restrictions on farms that guarantee that the land will stay permanently in agricultural use. Another example is at the Santos Dairy Farm in Westport.
Well, I'm a third generation. I'm a dairy farmer, and I have my homestead farm where I was born and raised. I work with 4 of my brothers, so we wanted to expand. So we found this farm, rented it, and we was here for 15 years renting it, and the owner wanted to retire, and he wanted to keep this as a farm, and he wanted us to keep it going and stuff, so he applied for the APR. So it was made to make it cheaper and stuff so that we could afford to buy it.
I was getting to the point where I was thinking about and seriously retiring, and I didn't have any children that wanted to take the farm over. And after working it for 55 years, I figured, it was about time to take it a little easier for a while. And I really didn't want to see this put into house lots. And I know I could have doubled my money if I really wanted to do that, but I felt that I'd like to see it kept in agriculture and kept open. And I sat down with them, and we kind of negotiated a price, and that's what happened. They're here, and I'm living next door.
At the Westport Rivers Vineyard and Winery, Bob Russell and family have the same concerns as other farmers in the Buzzards Bay area.
There are very few regions in the country that can claim to be a fishing and farming region as well as a fine food and wine region. And you just name that, and there's not many regions. There may be a couple, but not many. So we have that uniqueness. You have to view our connection with Buzzards Bay in a total ecological sense. And that is that what we do here eventually affects the wetlands, affects the rivers and everything else. And we're very sensitive to that. Just a month ago, in a commitment to the environment, we sold off the development rights to all of this farmland so they can never be built upon again.
Through the work of the Agricultural Preservation Restriction and our local Agricultural Preservation Trust Fund, we've been able to work with the local farmers to help to protect the existing old family farms that have been here for many years, and we hope to do what we can to keep them here.
In addition to the many working farms that surround Buzzards Bay, the northern stretches of the watershed are home to pristine forest and wildlands, which provide critical wildlife habitat and act as a natural filter for all water draining into the bay. Our agencies, along with local and private partners, have focused considerable resources towards the creation of a large bioreserve covering a portion of the Buzzards Bay watershed.
The objective of the bioreserve here is to create a 15,000 acre block of uninterrupted forest land. And strategically where it is between the city of Fall River, New Bedford and Taunton, it's our last chance to do that here. The countryside is being fragmented by indiscriminate development, but here is a core area that cannot be duplicated. A couple of years ago we couldn't imagine how this was going to get done, but with the state coming in and with the trustees of reservations helping to make this happen, partnering with the city of Fall River, what we'll have here is it's a tremendous legacy. We protect the water supply of the city. We protect amazing amounts of forest land, wildlife habitat, and we'll have it be available for recreation for folks in the surrounding areas. And we're really looking forward to living with it and taking care of it.
The Buzzards Bay watershed is the center of cranberry growing in Massachusetts. Recent economic difficulties are forcing many farmers to make hard decisions regarding the future use of their extensive land holdings. One example of a creative solution that protected developable land surrounding bogs while still allowing cranberry growing is a multi-partner effort between the town of Marion, our agencies, and the Sippican Land Trust.
The water quality study put out by the Coalition for Buzzards Bay indicated that Hammett's Cove was one of the most eutrophic bodies of water in all of Buzzards Bay. So we immediately launched a campaign to start trying to save any kind of open space within the Hammett's Cove watershed. We looked and saw this wonderful expanse of cranberry bogs and rolling woodlands and ended up talking to Doug Beaton.
Through a series of meetings over a period of a year, we think we've structured something that could be a model for others.
We have developed a model cranberry conservation restriction. We hope that this special conservation restriction for the cranberry industry can indeed be used by growers throughout the state.
This land stretches another 80 acres, 90 acres in this direction over to our town park, which is another 40 or 50 acres of land, and in the opposite direction over in this way all the way to the Sippican River. This is a large open body green space that I don't think that we ever imagined we could do a project this large.
I'm sure in my mind that when this is all over said and done, other cranberry growers in this area and hopefully other areas will look at this as a model and try to follow what we've done here so that we can protect these lands for future generations and also have the ability to raise food.
On a small scale, but of equal importance, many individuals throughout the watershed area, like Monica Weldon, help to protect hundreds of acres every year.
I took 16 acres of land. I'm farming actively about 4 to 5 acres of it. I'm doing cranberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, flowers, some vegetables, and a bed and breakfast. I'm an incredible advocate of land conservation. When I bought this place, it was actually 2 potential buildable lots. It was a 16-acre parcel, but I bought it that I could have built at least 2 houses on it. And that's without even putting a road in. But I'm so adamant about land conservation that I decided to take this land that was not developed and make it into a farm, and a very diverse farm at that. This is sort of a way for me to give something back to the community that I live in.
For our towns and land trusts to be competitive in land conservation in a real estate market that is really heating up in southeastern Massachusetts, we need the funds to protect places that are important to the Bay. And the Community Preservation Act is really giving towns another alternative to raise funds to buy the special open spaces in town. The farm, to protect their farms, their scenic shorelines, their forest lands, their drinking water supplies. Right now, towns really are ill-equipped within their current fiscal budgets to be able to handle the kind of open space acquisitions we really need.
Education is the key to instilling a sense of stewardship and an understanding of the value of our open spaces and sensitive areas. Growing up today in Buzzards Bay, children have more opportunities to connect with their environment than they did in the past. In Westport, a program sponsored by the Westport River Watershed Alliance brings fourth graders to a local salt marsh to explore living things.
Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning.
Does anyone know where we are? Raise your hand. Where are we?
The town beach.
Not quite. What do we call this area right behind us? It's a good guess, though. Yes. It's a marsh. Listen, look up here. We're at a salt marsh. And then I'm going to let you go out and do your surveys to find out what you can see. So come a little bit closer with me. The ribbed mussel spends the entire time out of the water at low tide, and in the summertime it can get up to 120 degrees in there. But then just the opposite, in the wintertime at low tide, this can freeze solid. So that'd be like taking a turkey sandwich, putting it in a microwave, and then putting it in a freezer. Would you want to eat it afterwards?
No.
Look. Okay. All right, right, snail, under animals.
These are called amphipods. Not a spider crab, they're called amphipods. Some people call them beach fleas, but they're not a flea at all.
And I think we have an anthropod.
Yeah! We have an anthropod.
Education about the Bay can continue far beyond grade school, as experienced by these students from Dartmouth High.
Welcome to the Ernestina. My name is Inette. I'm the program coordinator on board today. We need everybody's effort today to help us raise the sails, help us coil down the lines, and basically do any work on board it requires to sail a vessel. So you're all going to be crew members for the day.
The schooner Ernestina got underway this morning at 9 a.m. from the dock at State Pier in New Bedford. And on board we have Dartmouth High School. Margaret Brumstead is the teacher, the science teacher, and they're coming out here to explore the waters just outside New Bedford Harbor, heading out into Buzzards Bay.
Today they're involved in 5 different stations on board the ship. There's a water chemistry group right here.
You're going to have higher temperatures. You're going to have these influxes of temperature, increase in temperature, and it's going to affect the marine life immediate to that area.
Over there to my right now, they're doing navigation, so they're working with the charts.
Points that we thought were on land were also the ones that we found on the chart.
They're learning a little bit about the history of the ship with Tom, and there's another group that is driving the boat. One of the students is on the helm right now.
Perfect. Driving course. The schooner Ernestina has had many careers in her 107 years. A fishing schooner, an Arctic explorer, transatlantic Cape Verdean packet. But today the mission is education. The schooner Ernestina Commission is involved with other organizations in getting people out on the water in Buzzards Bay. What we figure is if they make a connection to these waters and whether it's the beaches or in the estuaries or getting out into the bay, they're going to it's powerful. They're going to not only do they learn a lot, but it's something they'll remember the rest of their lives.
These are only a few examples of the many environmental education efforts and success stories within the Buzzards Bay watershed. but there are many challenges which lie ahead. Although numerous shellfish beds have been reopened, there are still thousands of acres closed. Although growth management and the protection of water resources have become a high priority, some embayments remain choked or threatened by excess nitrogen caused by growth. And although thousands of acres of farms and forests have been protected for future generations, the vast majority of the watershed is still vulnerable to unmanaged growth. Now is the time to renew our efforts. Dedicated people serving on town boards continue to lead the battle to manage new growth. Town meetings are giving higher priorities to land and water protection. Individuals are re-examining their lifestyles with the health of the bay and its watershed in mind. Protection of the Buzzards Bay watershed reaches far beyond the land and water. It's the protection of our livelihood, of our way of life, and of our future.